I was up in Knoxville over the weekend to watch the Alabama against Tennessee game, and I also obviously kept tabs on a lot of the other big games that were going on in college football. But I want to tell you right off the top about the experience of going to a game, because I know a lot of you out there listening, depending on what part of the country you may be living in, may not have the opportunity to attend either a college or a pro game. This is my third football game to go to. I went to 2 Titans games in my hometown of Nashville, and I drove up for the weekend spent Friday and Saturday night in Knoxville, and went to go watch Alabama play Tennessee. So before I get into breaking down exactly how good I thought Alabama was, let me first say that it was great to see the Big Ten back, okay? Regardless of what your fan base affiliation is, this was the first, what felt like full weekend of college football action. And I thought it was fantastic. Michigan in the Big Ten looked great against Minnesota. I thought that that Ohio State did about what we expected might happen against Nebraska. I think college football, I'm going to talk about this a little bit with Joel in the third hour of the program. I think college football has got a major issue still with targeting. Nebraska had a couple of players that I don't believe should have been tossed from their games that were tossed, and I'll talk with Joel Klatt about that in the third hour of the program. But I thought that Indiana and Tom Allen, the Indiana coach, I hope you saw the video of all of the Indiana team celebrating after they got that win. And if you have followed Hoosier football at all, and I know we have a big audience of listeners in Indiana, those guys have been so close to getting a big win for so long. And to see Penix turn the corner there and Indiana go for 2 and score the way they did in overtime was a heck of a play. Impossibly difficult play to officiate, by the way. Even on instant replay, it was hard to tell. An incredible extension by him to break the plane and get the win going for 2. But it was a similar scenario to what we saw happen in the Atlanta game, where Todd Gurley tried to avoid going into the end zone, but he went in, and that allowed the Detroit Lions to get the ball back and drive down and put the game into overtime, to win the game. At the end of the game for Penn State, they allowed Indiana to get into position where they could get the touchdown and 2-point conversion to be able to put that game into overtime in the first place. They shouldn't have had that opportunity, but running backs made the decisions to score. And obviously Todd Gurley tried not to score, but the analytics situation there of basically not going into the end zone and allowing the clock to be run all the way down as opposed to scoring and giving your opponent the ball back. But those were impressive wins. Rutgers actually won a football game, so congrats to the Rutgers fans out there. Michigan State, it looks like it's going to be a long season, because I saw the opening lines come out, and Michigan is nearly a 4-touchdown favorite over Michigan State, which is telling you that Michigan State is a really bad football team this year. But Ohio State got the win. They look like the best team. We'll see what happens with Ohio State going on the road on Saturday against Penn State. But in terms of what it felt like to go to a college football game, I've been to Neyland Stadium since I was a kid. I started going to games there when I was 5 years old. My grandfather played for General Neyland back in the day before he was the general. My grandfather played in the 1930s for Tennessee. And so, like many people who have an affiliation with a college football program, it starts way before you would even think about being old enough to actually go to college. And so I've been to Neyland Stadium a ton. I'm fortunate enough to have been and seen there a ton of huge games there. And what's challenging is you've got this amazing 100,000-seat stadium, and there are only 20,000 or whatever the heck it is, 25,000 people that are actually in the venue. And so I was not in a suite. I was set out in the crowd itself with a couple of buddies, and it did not feel anywhere near like the usual environment. And let me say this. I've been to a couple of NFL games, And to me, NFL stadiums, as loud as they are, never in any way resemble a big college football game going crazy on a game day. Why is that? I think it's probably the student section. I think that there's just more intensity in a college football stadium. I think people care more about whether their college football team wins in that stadium in general than they do in an NFL stadium. The NFL is just much more, and I love watching the NFL, but it's much more of a corporate anesthetized version of football than college football is. College football is the most rabidly, crazily, wildly partisan sport that we have in America. And so that, I think, factors in a big way. So I felt like it was more noticeably quiet in the college stadium than I did in the NFL stadium. And that's despite the fact that I've been for two pretty good games to watch the Titans play against to watch the Titans play against the Bills and against the Texans in two games that ended up being really entertaining. And the Titans, obviously, as we were talking earlier, had a home play, could be a playoff game one day against the Steelers, and that was a wildly entertaining game as well. Now, Alabama beat the bejesus out of Tennessee. And so that probably factored in a little bit. But getting in and out of the stadium felt smooth. You were required to wear a mask walking around in the stadium and on entry to the stadium. At no point did I feel remotely scared or threatened. And there was distance between me and most of the other people in the stadium. If you are interested in going to a game, and obviously there are a lot of people who want to go to games, I think the majority, I saw a study the other day where the majority of American sports fans now believe it's okay to go watch games in person. If that is you, and you are starting to feel that same way, I mean, I've been taking my kids, I've been taking my family, I went with a couple of buddies and we watched the game all together. We also did a public meetup for Outkick, and I met a lot of the Outkick listeners out there, both Alabama and Tennessee fans who were in town for the game. And so that was a really cool experience as well. And I appreciate everybody who came and hung out at the Outkick tailgate and had conversations with us, because that was a really fun and enjoyable experience as well. But in general, I did not in any way feel threatened inside of the stadium. I think the SEC has done a really good job of playing almost all their games. They've played 30 out of 32 of the games so far, and I think that they're going to have a lot of success going forward. They're basically almost halfway through the season, and I feel like I need to knock on wood, because with the way everything has gone in the world, who knows what might happen this week, but things so far seem to be going pretty well. On the field, Alabama is one, even with Jalen Waddle getting hurt, and I hope he gets well. He got injured on the first play, and it's a significant injury. It's going to have him out for the rest of the season, sounds like. And I hope he gets well. He's a first-round receiver talent, along with Henry Ruggs and Jerry Jeudy and Devontae Smith. But even with that injury, Alabama has one of the best offenses that I have seen. They look like LSU did last year, where their offense is so good, the defense doesn't have to be electric. They just have to be able to make the right plays at the right time, and it's almost impossible to keep up with them. Mac Jones, I think, is almost a lock to be at the Heisman ceremony in New York. If they have the Heisman ceremony in New York, I don't even know what they're going to do this year. He is playing fabulously well. That offensive line protects him well. Najee Harris is a bruising running back. Alabama has such, at this point, a conveyor belt of wide receivers that they just up the next guy, even with Waddle being out, just like we saw this year with Waddle and Devontae Smith stepping in for Jeudy and Ruggs when they were first-rounders. There's just so much talent there right now. Alabama delivered a brutally precise beating of a sort of regularity as Nick Saban won against Tennessee for the 14th straight year. That is a long, long time. That is a lot of losses stacked up together particularly since the vast majority of those losses have not been particularly close. But the experience itself of being in a stadium, I was very happy to see the Big Ten back. I'm happy that everybody could be in college stadiums, and I appreciate everybody that I saw in Knoxville who came up and said hi. We had a massive number of Outkick crew that were out and about and came up and said hi, and I always appreciate that.